Hello, it's Vanessa and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome, welcome. Today I have a new pattern for you. I'm going to show you how to make tennis skirts. There are a few ways you can do this. There is a math equation you can use to get like your exact sizing, but if you're lazy like me, or maybe you're not exactly skilled at math, I have created a pattern to make it easier. The pattern is available on toothandeye.com, but I will also put a link in the description. Anyways, let's get started. The only measurements you need are your waist and your hips. Measure around the narrowest part of your waist, or just above your belly button. Now measure around the widest part of your hips, over the fullest part of your butt. Take these two measurements and find your size on the size chart. If you're in between sizes, size up for comfort. According to my measurements, I'm a size UK 10 or US 6. Print off and assemble your size using my tutorial on how to print layered PDFs, and it should look something like this. A very long pattern. Now you're going to mark out your pleats to make it easier to transfer on your fabric later. All you have to do is punch little holes in the ends of each dotted line. Ideally, you'd use an awl, but unfortunately I don't have one, so I'm just using a seam ripper. Feel free to reinforce these areas with tape, and just go slow so you don't accidentally tear the pattern. Make sure the holes are big enough for your fabric marker or chalk to get through. Once you're done punching all the holes, we'll move on to the tops of the pleats. All you have to do is cut little slits, roughly 1/2 centimeter or 1/4 inch, along the dotted lines. You could skip this step, but if you're neurotic like me, you have separate paper scissors and fabric scissors. Lay out your fabric and fold it in half. You might have to do this on the floor since there's so much fabric. Lay out your pattern and put the edge that says cut on fold along the fold. Pin or weight your fabric and cut out all the edges except the fold. You should end up with a very long piece like this, with a fold on one end and 2 layers on the other end. Now we will cut out the waistband. Feel free to add fusible interfacing by cutting out another waistband piece out of light to medium weight interfacing and ironing it to the back of the waistband. Unfold your fabric and lay it out right side up. Starting from the left, line the pattern up on top of the fabric, as evenly as possible. Now we will mark out our pleats. Using dress chalk or erasable fabric marker, start marking out the holes you punched earlier. Double check that they're all visible. Now using fabric scissors, start making little cuts in the fabric along the slits we made earlier. Double check to make sure you've marked all the tops of the pleats. Continue making your marks until you get to the end of the pattern. You'll now be halfway through the fabric. Using the bottom of the last pleat as a guide, line it up with the bottom of the first pleat. Make sure the pattern is lined up over the rest of the fabric and continue making your marks. Once you get to the end, you'll have a little bit of overhang, which is the seam allowance. This should be roughly 13 millimeters or half an inch. Now we're going to do something that's going to feel a little controversial. We're going to hem the bottom first. If you have a serger, serge all along the edge of the bottom. If not, feel free to stay stitch or even zigzag stitch the edge. Once that is done, we will fold up the bottom of the edge by 13 millimeters or half an inch. Pin, and iron. Keep repeating this until you finish the entire bottom hem of your skirt. Now we will straight stitch the bottom. This is going to seem weird, but start sewing the hem a few centimeters or a couple inches in from the end. This will make sense when we're finishing off the skirt. And do the same thing at the end, stopping a few centimeters or a couple inches before the end. Now we are on to the fun part, or the tedious part, depending on your personality. Making sure all your pleat marks are facing up, start from the left side of the fabric. You're going to want to find the first 2 dots. Ignoring the first dot, pinch the second dot, and line that second dot up with the third dot. Flatten out the fabric so it's not bunched, and pin the second and third dot together. Now you will do the same thing with the slits at the top. Ignore the first slit, fold the second slit, and line that up with the third. Making sure all the layers are lined up at the top, and pin. Flatten everything out with your hands, and move on to the next pleat. Taking the next dot, which is the 4th, pinch it and line it up with the 5th. Flatten out the fabric and pin those dots together. Repeat with the slits. Take the 4th slit and line it up with the 5th. Making sure the layers are all lined up straight at the top, and pin. Flatten that out and move on to the next pleat. You're going to want to make sure everything is flattened down and there's no bunching near the pins. Now continue this until you've completed all 20 pleats. You will have something that roughly looks like this. The very last pleat might look weird, but as long as you've lined up the very top right edge of the fabric with the top of the last pleat, then you're all good. Next is ironing. This is a lot easier on an ironing board, but if you don't have one, just work with what you've got, like I have with my folded up towel. You're going to want to work from left to right. Starting with the first pleat, make sure the area between the pins is ironed as perfectly as possible, making sure there are no ripples or folds near the pins. Then iron out the rest of the pleat where it naturally folds. Continue doing this for the rest of the pleats, making sure there are no weird folds on the back or around the pins. Once everything is all ironed, feel free to lay something heavy on top overnight. For example, you could use your cutting mat with a bunch of books on top. Once everything is all flattened out, just double check that there are no weird buckles and folds, and we will move on to our next step. Using a 1 centimeter seam, or 3/8 of an inch, sew all along the tops of the pleats. Adjust as you go and make sure you're sewing through all 3 to 4 layers of fabric. Double check the back to make sure you've sewn through all the pleats and that none of them are folded over incorrectly. Now we will top stitch each pleat to give that tennis skirt effect. This is a lot easier if you start at the top of the pleat and work your way down to the pin. Our goal is to sew just along the edge of the pleats. Line up the top of the pleat in the middle of the presser foot. Starting with the needle in the middle position, move it over 2 spaces to the left. Make sure everything is laid out flat without pulling the pleats open. Be conscious that the top can buckle, so make sure that the pleats on either side of the seam are laid out flat. Now sew all the way down to the pin. Adjusting the pleats to flat as you go. Once you get close to the pin, pull it out and continue the seam to where the pin was. Backstitch a couple times, then snip the threads, giving yourself enough room to be able to tie off the threads in the back of the skirt. It should look something like this. Now flip it over and tie off those threads in the back. If you want, you can trim the beginnings of the threads so that they don't get in the way later. Now repeat the same process on the rest of the pleats. Your pleats should start looking like this. Once you finish all those pleats, we will attach the waistband. Fold the waistband in half and put a pin to mark the middle. Do the same thing with the top of the skirt. With right sides together, pin the 2 middle parts together. Line up one of the side edges together and pin that. Repeat on the other side. Now find the middles between each pin and pin that together. Add more pins if you feel like, for a total of 5 to 9 pins. Using roughly a 13mm or 1/2 inch seam, sew the waistband to the top of the skirt. If you have a serger, feel free to serge the edge you just sewed. Or you can use a zigzag stitch for more stability. Serge or stay stitch the top of the waistband. Now, starting from the bottom, serge or stay stitch both sides of the skirt. Be conscious of the pleats that will be close to the edge. Once you get to the part that connects the waistband to the skirt, make sure you sew that seam towards the top of the waistband. With wrong sides facing up, fold the top of the waistband over by 13mm or roughly 1/2 inch. Pin and iron as flat as possible. Taking the side of the waistband, fold in half so that the top of the waistband sits a couple millimeters or a smidge past the seam that connects the skirt to the waistband. Place a pin at the center point. And repeat on the other side. This marks where the top of the zipper will sit. Use a zipper that is 18 to 23 centimeters or 7 to 9 inches. Or in my case, I like to use a zipper that is half the length of the skirt. I'm using a hidden zipper, but you could use an exposed zipper for a different look. Just keep in mind that might affect the final fit a little bit. With right sides facing up, start on the right side of the skirt. With the zipper zipped all the way up and facing right side down, align the very top of the zipper with the halfway pin on the waistband. Now shift the zipper in so that the zipper teeth line up 13mm or 1/2 inch in from the edge, basically the seam allowance. Place a couple pins to prevent shifting in the next step. Now, grab a needle with contrasting thread and we'll base stitch the zipper to the skirt. This just makes the zipper flatter than if you were to use pins. Now flip the skirt inside out and pin the left side of the zipper exactly how you pinned the right. Now just check to make sure everything is lined up properly, such as the top of the waistband and the seams connecting the waistband to the skirt. The more accurately these parts are all lined up, the better the finished skirt will look. And then base stitch. Switch your regular presser foot to a zipper foot. Ideally, I would use a hidden zipper foot, but I think I lost mine in the move, or maybe I never even owned one. Anyways, I'm just using a regular one. Attach the foot in the right position, so majority of the foot is sticking out to the left. Starting from the top left of the skirt, align the zipper teeth to the right of the zipper foot. Align the needle as close to the zipper feet as possible. Then starting at that halfway pin marker, sew all the way down to the bottom zipper stop. Halfway through, you'll have to close the zipper so that the zipper pull is behind the needle. Once at that bottom zipper stop, backstitch a couple times and snip your threads. Switch your zipper foot to the left position. And attach the other side of the zipper using the same techniques. Remove your base stitches and start pinning together the sides of the skirt underneath the zipper. Pull the bottom portion of the zipper out of your way, and starting from the end of the zipper seams, hand stitch roughly 6 mm or 1/4 of an inch towards the bottom of the skirt. If you flip the end right side out, you will see that the seam is hiding the bottom of the zipper. Now flip your skirt right side out, and we will encase the top part of the zipper inside the waistband. Unzip the zipper. Fold the top of the waistband down over the zipper, making sure the loose ends of the zipper are folded away from the zipper teeth. Line up the top of the waistband a couple millimeters or just a smidge past the seam that connects the waistband to the skirt. And pin. Repeat on the other side. Starting from below the waistband and using your zipper foot, sew along the encased zipper just like you did in the previous steps. Making sure the needle is as close to the inside of the zipper feet as possible. Repeat on the other side. Flip the pieces you just sewed right side out. And now your zipper is complete. Next is finishing off the waistband. Fold the top of the waistband down and pin it a couple millimeters or a smidge past the seam that connects the waistband to the skirt. Continue this for the whole waistband. Once done, feel free to iron and move on to the next step. Switch your zipper foot out for a regular presser foot. With your skirt facing right side out, sew right along the seam that connects the waistband to the skirt. This is why we pinned the inside of the waistband slightly past this seam. Next, we will sew the remaining side seam. Remember how we left those spaces on either side of the hem? Open up the hem and place a pin a couple centimeters or an inch or so away from the side seam. This will help everything lay flat. Starting from the bottom of the hem, sew a 13mm or 1/2 inch seam all the way up to the bottom of the zipper where we made those hand stitches. You can use a regular presser foot, but I like to use a zipper foot as it helps me get the seam as close to the hand stitching as possible. It doesn't have to be exact, it just needs to be close. You might also get some bunching if this seam is close to a pleat fold. Iron open the seam you just made, being careful not to iron any of the pleats. Fold up the remaining hem and iron. Feel free to pop in a pin for security. Now all you have to do is connect the hem seam. Backstitch and tie off your threads. And you're done! Double check all your seams, snip any loose threads, and make sure your zipper works well. Now put that baby on and take your new skirt out into the wild. Tennis skirts are super cute in the summer, but also great for Halloween and layering in the fall and winter. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and found it relatively straightforward. If you do have any questions or concerns, definitely ask me in the comment section or message me on my website. I would absolutely love to see your version of this skirt, so don't forget to tag me on Instagram or even TikTok. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in my adventures in South Korea, don't forget to check out my other channel. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.